Fresh court documents in Lil Durk's case have just surfaced, and they reveal some explosive new developments. The key witness, previously known as PW1, initially claimed that there was no bounty involved and insisted he didn't commit the alleged murder for money. He later shifted his story, seemingly under pressure, which has raised serious questions about his credibility. At one point, the allegation that D paid a bounty was quietly removed by the authorities, signaling that his narrative might not have been entirely reliable. As the documents show, PW1's account kept evolving, and it appears the government attempted to quietly manage or downplay these inconsistencies. The inconsistencies are now coming to light, and they have sent shockwaves across social media and the legal community alike. While many are viewing this as a potential win for Durk, there's also speculation that the situation could still backfire, given how central PW1's testimony has been to the case. The initial analysis of these filings suggests that the shifting testimony, combined with the quiet removal of key allegations, creates a tangled web that both sides will have to navigate carefully. Fans, legal analysts, and media outlets are dissecting the paperwork line by line, trying to figure out what this means for Lil Durk's defense strategy and whether the government can maintain its narrative. In short, these developments have added a new layer of drama and uncertainty to an already high-profile case. While the public digests the implications, one thing is clear: this story is far from over, and the latest revelations could reshape how the entire trial unfolds. Brand new court documents in Lil Durk's case have just dropped, and reactions are split almost perfectly down the middle. Some see these filings as the potential breakthrough Durk has been waiting for, while others are approaching them with skepticism, questioning whether the papers really offer any leverage. After poring over all 11 pages myself, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, taking careful notes on every detail, I can tell you this: the situation is far more intricate, more nuanced, and far more compelling than what most Twitter threads or Instagram posts are letting on. Before we dig into the trenches of these filings, breaking down every argument Durk's legal team is making and analyzing what this could mean for the case going forward, I want to be completely transparent. I've said multiple times on this platform that, in my personal opinion, just my honest, own take without trying to be dramatic or get sued, I think Lil Durk might actually be in serious trouble. Perhaps overly cooked, maybe even charred. Now, plenty of people will disagree with me. Some think I'm exaggerating, others think I simply don't understand the full context. I'm sharing this perspective not to dampen excitement or to be pessimistic for the sake of drama. It's because I think it's absolutely critical to approach these documents with clarity, to read them for what they actually say, rather than what people want them to say. Realistic expectations are key, and understanding the subtle details and implications is crucial if we want to make sense of what's happening. Here's another important point. Many prominent voices in hip-hop commentary remain convinced that Durk will beat this case. One of the most consistent has been C. Nash, who recently posted the new paperwork on both his Instagram story and feed, maintaining his long-standing stance that Durk will go free. And that perspective deserves to be heard and considered. Fair, balanced analysis requires acknowledging viewpoints we might not personally agree with. That said, after examining the optimism from C, SDI, and other commentators who believe in Durk's chances, it's time to go deeper. We're going to walk through these filings together, page by page, argument by argument. I'll highlight the strongest points from his defense, the weak spots, and ultimately explain why, despite the hopeful interpretations, I remain unconvinced that this case is in the bag for him. The reality is this: these court documents are layered, complex, and far from a straightforward win or loss. Every line, every clause, and every footnote carries weight, and while it's easy to jump to conclusions based on snippets shared online, the full story is far more complicated. By the end of this breakdown, you'll have a clear-eyed view of what the papers actually reveal, how Durk's legal team is strategizing, and why, for now, the outcome remains far from certain. This latest court filing isn't necessarily the smoking gun that some are hyping it up to be, the so-called game-changing, case-closing evidence that will instantly turn everything in Durk's favor. That said, and this is a massive, monumental that said, there's no denying that these new legal arguments from Durk's team could genuinely prove to be pivotal. This could very well be make or break for him. we could start to see the momentum shift in his favor. Durk might finally get some breathing room in a case that has been relentlessly scrutinized. But, and this is a colossal £400 if, the potential upside hinges entirely on how the government responds. If the authorities push back with full force, and all indications suggest that they might, then any advantage Durk's team has carved out could evaporate in an instant. At that point, he'd be fully exposed, in trouble like never before. That's the high-stakes reality of this case. What makes this filing so compelling isn't just the drama, it's the legal craftsmanship. There are layers upon layers of strategy here, with careful positioning, nuanced claims, and subtle maneuvering that most casual observers would miss. Strip away the hot takes, the Twitter commentary, and the Instagram speculation, and the crux of the matter lies in the last few paragraphs of this 11-page document. That's where the real story emerges, where the defense's true intentions and strategy are laid bare. Here's the plan. We're going to walk through the document together, breaking down each section, explaining the legal jargon, and translating the arguments into plain language. We'll differentiate between what Durk's lawyers are actually claiming and what the government has been asserting, so you can see exactly where the strengths and vulnerabilities lie. I've read these filings multiple times, taken detailed notes on every major point, and now I'm ready to unpack it all in a way that makes sense, cuts through the noise, and shows what's truly at stake. Before we get into the detailed analysis, it's worth considering the perspective of some of the industry's keenest commentators. C. Nash, for instance, highlighted key sections of the filing in his Instagram post, drawing attention to passages that underscore the core arguments of Durk's defense team. These insights provide valuable context and help frame the broader implications of the filing, details that are easy to miss if you're only skimming headlines or scrolling through social media takes. The takeaway? While this filing isn't automatically a win for Durk, it is undeniably fascinating from a legal standpoint. Every clause, every sentence, every subtle argument carries weight, and the way the government responds could define the next chapter of this high-profile case. In the filing, Durk's legal team points out something crucial. If there were any discovery that clearly eliminated doubt, the government would have cited it in their opposition. Yet, no such evidence exists. Nowhere in the discovery is there anything resembling a consistent, fixed account of the time, place, or circumstances surrounding the alleged bounty, or the supposed direction under which it was carried out. Instead, what the documents reveal is a witness, referred to as PW1, whose story has repeatedly shifted. This is explosive because the integrity of a prosecution often hinges on the reliability of its key witness. According to Durk's lawyers, PW1 initially claimed there was no bounty, insisting he never agreed to commit murder for money and acted only under duress. But then, as commentators like C. Nash have highlighted, that narrative appears to evolve. Suddenly, PW1's testimony references payments, bounties, and money changing hands. The filing details how this witness's account has allegedly shifted multiple times, raising serious questions about the credibility of his statements. For example, in one session documented by the government, PW1 recounts how Mr. Wilson allegedly stayed behind in Los Angeles after the other participants left in order to collect the bounty, a detail that the prosecution leans on to establish the supposed monetary motive. On the surface, it seems significant, but when viewed alongside the earlier contradictions, it becomes much less clear-cut. Durk's attorneys argue that this inconsistency is far from trivial. They note that when the government recognized the contradictions in PW1's testimony, they quietly removed certain allegations from the indictment between the first superseding indictment and the second. That's not just a minor procedural adjustment. It's a move that speaks directly to the credibility of the prosecution's cornerstone witness. The implications are significant. A witness whose story fluctuates on fundamental points, like the existence of a bounty, casts doubt on the reliability of the entire case. If the foundation of the prosecution rests on testimony that keeps changing, questions arise about whether the case can withstand scrutiny. As Durk's legal team emphasizes, the inconsistencies cataloged in discovery highlight serious concerns about witness credibility, the strength of the government's evidence, and whether the prosecution's narrative is truly as solid as it has been portrayed. In short, What this filing underscores is that the government's key witness may not be as dependable as the case requires. And with credibility in question, the arguments put forward by Durk's defense take on a new, potentially game-changing significance. Durk's legal team is facing a challenge that's as moving as it is unforgiving. After sharing some of this information, one commentator explained that he planned to step back and let other analysts, bloggers, and commentators break down the story for the community. And honestly, that's a smart move. This is the kind of case that deserves deep, multi-angle analysis, not rushed hot takes. But let's pump the brakes for a moment. After carefully reading through the full 11-page filing myself, taking detailed notes on every argument, claim, and referenced piece of evidence, it's clear there's far more nuance here than what's circulating on Instagram or Twitter. Important context gets lost in the social media shuffle, and those small legal realities could dramatically shift how we interpret what Durk's defense is actually trying to accomplish. Make no mistake, this filing represents a pivotal moment in the case. But it's not necessarily the slam dunk, unambiguous one that some are portraying. Instead, it functions more like an ultimatum to the prosecution. In essence, Durk's team is saying, "You claim to have proof, to have all this evidence, but show it. Put up or shut up." The defense is challenging the government to substantiate its allegations with the concrete details that are currently missing. Here's the key point. If the government can provide those missing details, specific times, locations, circumstances, and hard evidence, then the stakes for Durk rise dramatically. Right now, the prosecution's case is like a puzzle with a few critical pieces absent. Durk's attorneys are essentially arguing that without these pieces, the picture is incomplete and the case should collapse. But if the government supplies those pieces and they fit perfectly into the puzzle, seamlessly reinforcing their existing evidence, the case could pivot sharply against the defense. The filing itself, titled Durk Banks's reply in support of his motion to dismiss the entire indictment due to vagueness, or in the alternative, for a bill of particulars, may sound like legalese overload, but the essence is straightforward. Durk's lawyers are challenging the indictment on the grounds that it's too vague to proceed fairly, or at the very least, demanding a detailed bill of particulars to clarify exactly what the government is alleging. The argument loops back to a central point by the end of the filing, emphasizing that the government's case lacks the specificity required for a fair trial. In short, this filing is a high-stakes legal maneuver, part challenge, part strategy, part ultimatum. It forces the government to either expose the full extent of its evidence or risk having the indictment undermined. But the outcome is far from guaranteed. If the prosecution responds with a complete, detailed, and airtight picture, the advantage could quickly shift away from Durk. This is the kind of nuanced, high-drama legal chess that requires careful attention to every word, every paragraph, and every claim, because the consequences for either side are enormous. Durk's legal team is essentially putting the government on notice. Either drop the entire indictment or provide detailed, concrete information about what they claim Durk did, when, where, and how. Honestly, this feels like a classic Hail Mary pass, a bold, desperate, but potentially strategic move in the legal chess game. The reality is, if the government responds by supplying all the missing details, specific times, places, and circumstances, Durk's defense could be in trouble. The chances of the indictment being completely dismissed are slim. There's a small possibility the government's response might be weak, leaving the defense with some leverage, but in federal cases like this, prosecutors typically come prepared with extensive resources. So, a sweeping victory for Durk isn't the most likely outcome. Breaking down the filing itself, the early pages focus on one central argument. The indictment is allegedly too vague. Durk's lawyers contend that it fails to clearly define the supposed bounty on Quando Rondo, leaving critical questions unanswered. This is where online commentary often jumps to conclusions. You'll see people claiming, "See, there was never a bounty. The case is crumbling." But that's a misunderstanding of the actual situation. The government has already explained in earlier filings why it hasn't disclosed certain specifics. Revealing too much could endanger witnesses, compromise confidential sources, and put family members at risk, a particularly real concern in cases involving gang activity or alleged murder-for-hire plots. These are legitimate legal considerations, and they play a big role in how prosecutors navigate sensitive cases. What makes this filing significant is that Durk's attorneys are essentially forcing the prosecution's hand. By highlighting the vagueness, they're demanding more concrete information, pushing the government to clarify details that are crucial to the defense. The filing zeroes in on two main issues: the alleged bounty itself and what the defense refers to as the pervasive yet vague at the direction of accusations. According to Durk's team, these 2 points are the linchpins of a murder-for-hire charge. Without clarity on either, they argue, the case lacks the specificity required to hold up in court. So, while this legal maneuver is aggressive and high-stakes, it's not a guaranteed win. It's a calculated challenge, forcing the prosecution to either substantiate its allegations or risk weakening its case. In many ways, it's less about immediately winning and more about forcing transparency and testing the strength of the government's evidence. The coming response from the prosecution will be critical. It could either validate the defense's concerns or reinforce the government's position and put Durk in a more precarious situation. Durk's legal team is essentially laying down a challenge to the prosecution, saying, "You haven't told us the when, the where, or the why of this alleged bounty. Sure, you're talking about money and lucrative music opportunities, but the specifics are completely missing. The problem is, we don't yet know how the government will respond. They could come back with something concrete, like, on Wednesday, November 5th, 2021, Durk sent a group text to F members stating he would only give verses to those targeting Quando Rondo. If evidence like that exists, the defense's vagueness argument immediately loses traction. On the other hand, if the government can't provide anything so specific, they would at least need a witness, maybe a confidential informant, who can testify about the details. Imagine they have someone who can say, Durk promised $20,000 for a shot at Quando and $50,000 if he was killed, plus a verse on a track. While not as airtight as a direct text message, it's still substantial, admissible evidence. It's also far more than what some skeptics online claim, that the government has nothing at all. The reality is that the government almost certainly does have something. The key unknown is how precise and compelling that evidence will be. If they can clearly show the who, what, where, when, and why, the time, place, and circumstances of these alleged bounty offers, the defense's argument about vagueness could completely collapse. The defense currently points out that the indictment only vaguely claims that something occurred over a nearly 2-year period. But the government might respond with multiple concrete instances of Durk allegedly offering money or career incentives to rally gang members against Quando Rondo. One instance could be enough. Several would be devastating. If no concrete instances exist, then yes, the vagueness argument would carry serious weight. However, my take is that we're unlikely to see that scenario unfold. Another interesting angle in the filing is the selective scope of Durk's challenge. He's not disputing every aspect of the indictment, only the bounty itself and the directions he allegedly gave. By doing this, it appears he's creating a clear legal separation between his actions and those of the co-defendants. The filing emphasizes that the second issue is Durk's alleged directions, which are his sole claimed link to crimes carried out by others in his absence. Notice the wording carefully. It's not alleged crimes by others, it's crimes carried out by others. The defense is implicitly acknowledging that these crimes occurred, but arguing that Durk's connection is tenuous at best. The filing also makes clear what Durk is not challenging: the motive, dates, times, stalking allegations, gun possession, the murder itself, use of interstate commerce, or overt acts supporting conspiracy charges. In essence, the defense is drawing a line in the sand. Those other defendants? Their cases stand. But you don't have solid proof linking Durk to the murder-for-hire claim. This is a highly calculated strategy. The lawyers are essentially saying, yes, there's evidence against the other defendants for serious crimes, but the prosecution hasn't proven Durk's role in this specific charge. That's the battleground we're focusing on. It's a classic example of precision in legal strategy, targeting the weakest link in the government's case and forcing them to either tighten their evidence or risk having the charge dismissed. At the heart of it, what we're watching unfold in Lil Durk's case is essentially a high-stakes legal chess match. This latest filing from his defense team is, in essence, an ultimatum aimed squarely at the prosecution. Either drop the indictment entirely or lay out the concrete specifics you claim to have. If the government can't provide that level of detail, Durk's legal team wins this round. But if they come back armed with precise, verifiable evidence filling in all the gaps, this move could backfire dramatically on the defense. We're at a true crossroads here. This is a pivotal moment in the case, and the prosecution's next steps will almost certainly shape how everything that follows unfolds. Stepping back to view the broader picture, this isn't just another legal filing. It's a calculated challenge that forces the government to either produce detailed proof or risk undermining their own murder-for-hire allegations. Durk's lawyers have drawn a sharp line in the sand, highlighting what they argue is fatal vagueness in the indictment, particularly around the alleged bounty and the specific instructions he supposedly gave to co-defendants. For those who are optimistic, like C. Nash and other commentators predicting a win for Durk, this filing reads like vindication. The main witnesses' inconsistent statements, the government quietly removing certain allegations between indictments, these are indeed significant points that call the prosecution's credibility into question. But here's the reality check. Federal prosecutors don't bring high-profile cases like this lightly, especially when major celebrities are involved. They have the resources, the investigative tools, and the manpower to build substantial, multi-layered cases. While the defense's filing exposes gaps and ambiguities, the real question is whether the prosecution can close those gaps with precise evidence. If the government responds with specific dates, detailed communications, and credible witness testimony addressing each concern raised by the defense, identifying exactly when the bounty was offered, the amount, the instructions, and who was present, Durk's legal position could become far more precarious, no matter how compelling this filing seems on the surface. Conversely, if the government fails to provide this level of detail and continues leaning on vague allegations and broad timeframes, this filing could represent a significant victory for Durk's team, potentially weakening the case or even prompting dismissal of certain charges. Bottom line, we're in a tense waiting game. The prosecution's response will reveal the true strength or weakness of their case. This isn't over by any stretch of the imagination. Whatever happens next will be crucial for Lil Durk's legal future, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Stay tuned, because the next chapter in this case is likely to define the trajectory of the trial and Durk's potential outcome.